Thanks for listening to another episode of the Faces of Newquay podcast. Today we're speaking to Luke from the Newquay Community Orchard. We have a great chat about their involvement in the community and what their plans are for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just start like that. So
Good start.
We're in. We're going already.
Good.
I loved the tour and love what you're doing here, and I really felt kind of overwhelmed with how much is happening here. And I think it would be great if you just kind of broke down what's going on here at the moment and all of the different projects that
it's a job.
The Orchard's working with. Yeah.
We've got an awful lot going on, I think. So the site's ideally separated into what we call 6 enterprises. The first 2 of which are running at the moment, which are the education and social programmes. The social programmes are probably our primary focus. That's where we get our money, and that's how the site is operating. And when I say social programmes, it's effectively they're still educational programmes. So the idea behind those is taking volunteers, delivering skills, and ideally changing lives, instilling sort of, I suppose, just simple little things to make small little changes to improve someone's ability to either get a job, socialise, reconnect with what we consider normal society, those sorts of things. So we've got 2 programmes running at the moment. One, Sustainable Lives, which has just launched, which we're very excited about. That's been a lot of work to get that over the line. And that focuses predominantly about how people interact with the environment and how people can make changes within their own lives to become a bit more sustainable, be it food, energy, money, all sorts of different things. So it's quite a holistic thing that people can get involved with.
Is that a project that people volunteer and join in, or is it a sign up or part of a...
That's more of a sign up. So the site's run on 2 levels really. Everyone's a volunteer. We consider everyone on site a volunteer. If you're unemployed or you have mental health issues, then you are able to qualify for a programme. And all that does is unlock a number of different things which are funded separately for you to get involved with. And that's where the more sort of educational delivery comes into play. We do have also budget for other sort of skill development, but yeah, I mean, there's a whole range of stuff you can do and quite long-winded really. But
So the Sustainable Lives programme, is that for a certain demographic, or is it open to...
No, I mean, it's anyone over the age of 16 and below retirement age, so quite broad. And that's one of the nice things about it, that sort of generational mix, which has been really important, really powerful for us, allows people just to connect with people that they normally wouldn't have done. And through that, there's a much richer sort of educational platform here. It's a very informal thing, very socially led, rather than it being a structured process. And we found that has delivered the best results for changing people's lives and getting people back into work predominantly. But actually, just from a social perspective, the most powerful thing we've seen is the friendships people form here, which inevitably provide much better longer term support than we can deliver on site. So it transcends the boundaries of the site really.
It's quite a nice way of meeting people in a fairly relaxed, not forced way.
Yeah.
And you know that you're going to meet people that are interested in the same kind of things that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a normal way of meeting people, I think. And this is what you find is society generally is become much more insular, or people have become much more insular. It's just that word community, isn't it, I think? And that we are a community hub, and that's the whole point of it. It's allowing people to meet people in the way they should be meeting people. You know, it's... Yeah.
Not through technology, maybe.
No, well, I think screens have a lot to do with it. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I liked about just walking around. I felt like if I'd have got my phone out, it would have been. It just doesn't suit the environment, and that's
far from
that's
it.
needed.
Yeah, I think it's a sanctuary, isn't it? Really, so it's a place for people to escape what are those modern pressures that we all face now? And I think that's something that is drastically overlooked as we sort of lose a lot of our green space, a lot of our sort of green lungs, a lot of our places to escape, particularly in urban areas. We just, we need it. It's a very, very simple thing and something that's too readily overlooked, I think. But we're trying to change that. And I think the whole point about the design of the site here is that it's supposed to be a different look on the way, particularly urban parks are designed. Whereas urban parks provide sort of recreation space, we do things on a much bigger level. From an environmental, social and economic perspective, we deliver much bigger benefit to a community and actually provide the mechanism for community to...
I like this idea of replacing your traditional park with something more of a community space. And even just, like, I've seen a few social projects where they just take unused green spaces. I think it's called guerrilla gardening.
Guerrilla gardening's fantastic, yeah.
And just turn it into, publicly managed and publicly used growing spaces.
Well, it's allowing people to take control back, isn't it, as well, to a certain extent. I think everyone's aware of the sort of poor planning and design practices in urban environments now. And there's a lot of those incredible edible guerrilla gardening, all those sorts of things popping up everywhere. There's a real movement in it, I think, which is lovely, but still a lot more work that needs to be done. And it's convincing. I don't think it's the individuals living in communities that need to be convinced. It's probably the powers that be need to be convinced to allow that process to happen, rather than it just being a guerrilla gardening experiment.
Because I find when you talk to individuals about it, everyone's keen for more, community everything. Yeah. Gardening, eating together, whatever it is. But then to get things organised, it has to go through the powers that be, the local council or other spaces like that. And that's, for me, where it feels like it gets snagged a little bit or takes a bit longer.
Yeah, it does, but also I think they need to be presented with evidence that it works. And again, that's what this is about, really. It's effectively a research and demonstration site. So we've divided it into very broad range of things to demonstrate how each element can work, but also how each element can be picked up as a blueprint and placed in a different space. And it's really the social dividend that needs to be evidenced most strongly. So if you even do a simple thing as a roadside verge, if you allow a community to take responsibility for that, and then that long-term stewardship of it, it not only reduces the maintenance costs for the council or anyone else who's in control of it, but it allows that community then that social contact, food. There's lots of simple little things. That can be done everywhere. And I think another thing we're trying to do is you can't view these sites in isolation. It's what we consider ourselves is that big central green lung community hub. And if you can design other spaces as satellite points around it with different niches, then you create this whole collective of sort of effective green space which provides benefit for everyone.
Which I don't think there is another council out there that has like a comprehensive, useful green space like that.
No, but I think that it's things like that are creeping back into planning decisions now, which is interesting. The sort of garden cities movement, which is created in the 1920s, and there's examples of it around. But now there's Town Country Planning Association are starting to recognise that a bit more. So even in Cornwall, there's sort of garden village at Langarth, which is now in the thought process. Nan's Leden next door sort of covers quite a lot of those principles. So there is a movement for it. Yeah. But
do you think does that come from the kind of more awareness of climate change, or kind of the benefits of sharing green spaces with the community?
I think it's probably more to do with climate change and trying to find solutions. I think we're presented with doomsday predictions on a regular basis. Sort of climate change, mass extinction, mass migration, the sort of societal collapse that potentially then leads to. So a lot of things need to change, And I think there is a willingness to do that at a number of levels, but there's still steps you need to go further beyond that. And I think we feel we're doing our little bit with that here. I mean, one of the reasons we did this is purely frustration from that process, but also it scares the crap out of me to think of the road we're leading on. And you're either bury your head in the sand because you can't face it, or you try and find a way which you can really create change. And how can you do that on a one little person level? And you can only do what you can do, but if you can start getting people around you, which creates a movement, then that becomes a more powerful thing. And I think everyone sees it as a very scary thing when you're presented all of these big weight issues.
Yeah.
Climate change is that's quite a thing to carry on your shoulders, everyone. But where's the hope? And hope's the fundamental key word, I think. If you're not presented with hope in a situation, then you're sort of doomed to fail.
Yeah, because like having spoken to Plastic Free Newquay and doing the podcast and other things like that, sometimes I feel people are losing the belief that their kind of small changes make a difference, which of course they do, because you have such, big businesses creating more kind of waste and whatever you can.
I think
produce
that obviously they've got a lot to account for, corporation greed, but it's also, there's a responsibility from environmental activists to provide that hope, because at the moment you are shoved with negativity. It's all of the facts that you don't want to hear, and then that's what you take away, and then you just slump and you don't know what to do with it. If they don't provide you at least some solution or some hope that there is hope, then what's the point? What are you supposed to do? And I think what we do here, rather than looking at that massive picture, you've got to simplify it into this is what you can do on a local level. And if we can get what we do here right on a local level and get all of these people involved, then you are making a difference. And that is the domino effect that, if everyone got it right on a local level, then there's no issue, is there? So let's focus on that little bit, and then later on you've got the evidence to go a bit bigger. And small chunks, isn't it? But of course every little thing helps. Of course it does, but you've got to feel like it helps as well.
Does your vision for this place extend off this site? I know you talked about the parks, but would you replicate this in another part of the country?
There's certainly ambition to do it. I've aged considerably doing this, and I think it's having the appetite to do it, isn't it? I think there's interest in doing it at the moment, and fundamentally, yes, we all believe in what we're doing here, and the point of it was, let's create a blueprint that can be replicated anywhere and give that to a community to then take the lead on doing it. And the difficulty is trying to find a mechanism in which a community can do that. Expertise, financially, all of those things, the land, there's a number of barriers there which we've taken a lot of time to overcome. And building the infrastructure and the back end stuff here is a considerable amount of work. So we understand it, and if we can provide a package for that to happen, then great. But we're not quite there yet. And again, it comes from how much do we want to do before we kill ourselves.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty and the curse of a place like this, is that the options are exciting and there's so many, but the time of people that work here is
if you love a project, then this is the place for you, because there's plenty of them. But it's I think it's a case of just being realistic as well. I think.
How do you feel like you manage your time with such a...
Terribly.
Yeah, I would be the same. I don't think I would survive having a place like this.
No, I mean,
I'd be working on it all the time.
But you do, and that's the sacrifice you make. And I think people don't really understand the sacrifices going into these sorts of things. I didn't get paid for 3 years here, and it's nearly broken me, I think. But you reach a point where it becomes manageable. It's just getting to that point when it becomes manageable, and then it becomes more and more manageable as you build this. We've got an amazing team here, but it's taken a long time to build that team.
Yeah.
And I feel that everyone who's here really believes in the values that we've got, and that's really important as well. And when you can start delegating some of that responsibility, the weight on your own shoulders starts to get slightly lighter, and you can focus on the things that actually mean things to you again. Focusing on why you've done this, why you've set it up. And
what was it that kind of made it? Was yourself that set this up?
Yeah, and I think it's all go through the mill with that in my own head, but a lot of it comes back down to that hope. I went back to university when I was in my late 20s to study ecology, and it's probably one of the worst places you can be as an environmentalist. University, because that is literally all you're fed is those doomsday predictions all the time, and I'm bipolar, so I'm sort of spiralling into depression through that time, and then you starting to analyse, well, what can I actually do, and then started to design this.
Knowing that the land was
it's more of the concept, I think. And it's grown in ambition. It wasn't like this when I first had it in my head, but I think someone recently said to me, on your deathbed, are you able to look at your kids in the eyes and tell them that you've done everything you could? And that's probably one of the main driving forces for doing this, is that we are in a situation, and if you feel you can leave knowing that you've done everything you could to stop it and make a difference, then that's enough, I think. And I've got 2 young kids, and that's, I fear for the world that they're going to live in, so that I don't think there's any stronger driving force needed than that, really.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of like environmental activists as a kind of motivator for them. Yeah,
I think I don't think there's anything more powerful than that from a personal perspective. That's everything, isn't it? And from my own perspective, being bipolar is interesting in a situation like this, because you have an awful lot of responsibility, and depression's an interesting thing to come to terms with, but you want to try and cure yourself as well. And the healing nature of this place is immensely powerful for myself. Therefore, I know it works for other people. So there's it's two-sided thing there, really. But yeah, the kids are quite important in that process.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
1 and 5.
1 and 5.
Yeah.
Are they down here a lot? Or?
We don't spend as much time here as you think. Actually, I think and also don't spend as much time working here as the office is located off-site at the moment. When the community building's in, it's slightly different, but I don't get to enjoy it as much as I'd like to, or certainly as much as I used to. I think I've transitioned into the office after being on site for the first couple of years. That's quite hard to take.
Being in the office now.
Yeah, well, it's necessary because that's where most of the work is needed.
Yeah, so I run a tennis coaching business.
Oh, great.
So I went from being on court with groups of 10, 20, 30, 4, 5-year-old children, to now being completely office based, and it's it's just such a different energy, and
it's
a
difficult thing to get your head around,
rhythm of life.
Yeah,
and I always say to other people that I know do the same thing. It's great envisaging the future of what you want to do, what you want to achieve, but to get there is a lot of boring admin that you've got to do.
Yeah, and people don't see it. Here's a sort of prime example of, we joke about it, that I'm never here, but the reality is people don't see everything else that goes into it. And it's it'll be the same for you. All of that, the front end stuff is the fun bit that people really engage with and see, but there's probably 20 times more work back end that people will never see or never appreciate, and that's okay, because that's the sacrifice you have to make to get it done, isn't it? Really, it's it'd be nice to spend more time up here, and I'm sure it'd be nice for you to spend more time there, but it'll happen. I think if you've still got that if you've still got that drive to get it to a place which enables you to get to that point, to re-engage with the core reason for setting it up, then if you don't have that, then it becomes quite a difficult thing to.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel glad that our coaches are so good that I know that the kids are going to have a great time doing the lessons, and that's why we set it up.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough to have the same with the team we've got here. It's having that trust, isn't it, and being able to hand that over with knowing that it's in really, really safe hands. And that takes a bit of time to get to as well. Handing your baby over to someone else.
So you had this idea when you were studying. How did it go from the idea to kind of where we are now?
Well, I applied for a very small pot of funding from the Big Tree Plants. It must have been 6 years ago. It was a tiny bit, it was about $6,000, and that was to set up a community nursery and enable me to develop the design for a site. And then because we originally were looking at Trethera School, which is next door, they were trying to sell some land to Tesco at the time. There's sort of relatively large community uproar about that. But we didn't have 13 million quid to spend on the land, which was a bit of a shame. And actually the Duchy then approached me at that stage, which was interesting.
Are they calling?
They are calling.
Yeah, no, take it.
Do you mind? I'm really sorry.
No. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just before the break we were talking about the kind of origins of this and how it got started.
Where did we get to? Tretheris.
Yeah. Well, so once you got given the land.
So the Duchy called up, gave us the land. Well, they didn't do that, but
Just called
there you
up.
go.
There you go.
That was quite a long negotiation process actually, and it took a long time to develop what was that initial proposal document, and a lot of money actually to develop that. And that was a back and forth negotiation process about how the site could work and should work. And now that initial proposal is still relevant. You know, the master plan for the site is still very much the same. There's a couple of bits that have obviously grown in ambition in terms of, the amphitheatre, which is completely grown out of proportion in terms of what it was originally. And a few other things like the maker space weren't originally put, and the wood workshop weren't originally part of the plan, but the community building was there, the rest of the landscape was there. And I'm quite proud of that really, that the fact that original concept still remains very true to where we are now. We probably don't reference it enough actually, but it's still just off.
But it's still
doing silly things, but it's still there.
And still kind of adapted with how the space, what suits the space.
And I think it does. I think we've kept most of the big development to the perimeter of the site, so we retain all the green space centrally, which is really important because that's the main point of it. But I think the design's relatively solid, and I think the beauty of it is the detail within it can still be relatively flexible, so it allows it to evolve relatively organically and to community input, so it feels like the community is driving it forward. We've effectively put the framework in for them to detail design, if that makes sense.
Because that's the running theme throughout the series of podcasts that we've filmed already, is this sense of really positive organisations that are making a great impact on the community. Similar to what we talked about earlier with this idea of solving bigger issues by sorting out your small communities. Like, where do you see this place sitting in the community, and what's the kind of relationship with the buildings around and Newquay in general?
Difficult to pinpoint, I think, at the moment, because what we do now probably won't be what we do in 5 years' time. It'll be very different, particularly when the bigger things like the amphitheatre and the community building go in. At the moment, it is a sanctuary, and that's probably the main function it provides. It's a place for people just to come and escape, and if they want to get involved in other stuff, they can, but it's a very relaxed process in that respect.
And anyone can come and
it's
around.
open 24/7. There's a public footpath that dissects the centre of the site. We can never close it, and we don't want to close it. That's the point of it. It is a park, and we just operate here every now and again, and that's the way we sort of look at it.
Yeah.
It'll change that. I think the bigger things going in change the way that operates, because we'll have to close off little bits every now and again. But we also have to generate income to keep the site going. So it's that's the weighing off thing. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know what our role in the community is. I think initially sanctuary, but definitely community hub going forward.
Yeah.
Because
and
there will be
you work
some
with a lot of the local schools, do you, bringing them in?
Yeah, we do. We work slightly ad hoc with the local schools. I think we'd like to work a lot more with the local schools, but at the moment we don't really have a function for that to happen. Again, it comes back to a capacity thing. What we're doing at the moment is focusing on very much the social stuff and the education, and the education is more of an internal thing rather than below 16s.
Like workshops and
yeah, very much so. And we run some qualifications, but I mean, I think again, when we've got more things here which are more attractive for schools to get involved in, that'll certainly be something we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into the kind of future plans, because from what I understand, the amphitheatre will be definitely a spot where you can have a whole school come down and enjoy.
Yeah, so the amphitheatre is a bit of a monster. I think originally we were looking at something which is very much a landscape feature, which we could do some small events in. Now it's turned into a 600-seater indoor venue, which is the second largest indoor venue in Cornwall, behind the Hall for Cornwall. And we're not going to get there straight away. It'll be a phased delivery programme, but that's things like theatre, music, comedy, cinema, conferences, weddings, all of that sort of stuff is there and in the plans. And it's, again, we don't want to dictate what should go in. That we're not an arts organisation. The whole point about the amphitheatre and really the Orchard as a whole is it's a platform for other organisations to thrive in. So therefore we'll be working with a number of arts organisations like Blistra, Art8, Sprout Spoken, that sort of stuff, to put events on like that there, and it's a place for them to call home. And that's then the beauty of creating that collective strength in the site. It's the same with the community building. We want a co-working space in there. It makes absolute sense for us to have that, but we'll focus on organisations which either bring real value to the project, or an environmental or charitable or local community organisation, and again offering the chance for them to have a platform and call the place home. Inevitably what you're doing is building up a much bigger community, not just of organisations but also the audience they bring, and it becomes a really thriving asset then.
So you'll have the amphitheatre.
So the amphitheatre goes to the northwest of the site. The community building, which is again, we don't really seem to do things on a small scale, but the community building is about 4,500 square foot, which isn't small. It's a big old building, but that'll house the co-working space, big function space, which will probably have more of a pop-up venue feel to it, but allow community groups to use the space if necessary. And then we've got our office there, which will be transformative for us as well. At the moment we're located off-site, so being able to move up here again, that's what it's all about. But we want to do things like feast nights and maybe a cafe space in there. It's again to be determined. Over the next couple of years we'll try a range of things in there, see what fits, see what people want. We have the sort of relative freedom and flexibility to do that, which is quite a luxury. And it just means we remain relevant, really, driven by the community need and want. It's the way it should be.
Do you have a timeline for this?
So the building and amphitheatre break ground in August.
Okay.
And hopefully, certainly within this time next year, they'll be in and operational in some form. To be determined what form that is. But yeah, I mean, that's really exciting. It's daunting because I think spent the last 5 years talking about that, and now it's time to put on some big boy trousers and actually do it, which is slightly it's concerning but exciting at the same time. And then we've also got the makerspace, which we want to develop. So at the moment we've got it's a very relatively informal green woodworking space, which we're just trying to pilot how to develop those skills and deliver those skills. The makerspace will be much more technical led, so sort of CAD led, laser cutter, 3D printers, CNC routers, where we can develop real product design opportunities for people and for makers as well. So there's opportunity for makers there to take up residence if they want. And then we've got arts, we've got craft, we've got product design, we've got co-working space, we've got it's a proper community hub then. And then we've got obviously the green landscape which goes alongside it. So the horticultural stuff we've got here in the grow space, again, it's fundamentally important to that. So we'll grow all the produce for the cafe within the building. We've got the opportunity to develop a range of small little products. We've got all of the orchard to develop our own cider. There's so much stuff we can do, but we're not fixed to anything. So if people want to come and get involved and have ideas, the door's always wide open. That's what it's all about.
Quite open to people coming in.
Absolutely, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
We're not here to dictate how it goes. We can influence it, but the whole point is that as many people that get involved, the better. That's where ideas are formed. It's quite an exciting thing for us, I think, but also got to do it relatively responsibly.
Yeah. I mean, how do you balance this kind of vision for growth with it not overstretching? Or
I think vision for growth is fine, but it's more how you retain your ethos. I think is the most important thing. Okay.
What would you describe the ethos as?
Very much community focused, and I don't think it's any more than that really. We're an environmental organisation, fundamentally. That's my passion, but we're a community environmental organisation, and what we want to do is make this a space for everyone. It's very inclusive, and if we lose that, then we've not done our job. And which is why we've designed it in a way that there is something for everyone in everything we're doing. And we do talk about big things, but they are achievable. And I feel that each one on its own, because we've got so many of them, doesn't need to be a really big commercial operation. If it ticks over and creates a small profit, each one of these elements, then that's all that's necessary. So you don't have to question. You don't. Your ethos will remain solid if you don't get too greedy with it, and we don't need to be too greedy with it. We know what we do works, and there'll always be a need for it. The rest of it just gives it a bit more clout, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be really good.
I hope so. We've just got to do it now. What we've done here in 4 years on a shoestring budget is remarkable, and that's testament to the support we've had from the community. Really, we've run 4 crowdfunds and raised over £100,000 through crowdfunding. The first of which we went for a £30,000 target and raised £66,000. Wow! So financially, the community's backed it. People have backed it with their time and with their passion and with their commitment.
I thought it was amazing hearing the number of hours that you said people had kind of donated. Yeah,
it's well over 20,000, I think, which is it's quite a staggering figure. But also the benefits that we've been measuring stuff. We were lucky enough to get lottery funding nearly 3 years ago now. We're hopefully going to achieve that again. But the social benefits and health and wellbeing benefits that come out of that, 94% of people that have come here have said it's improved their mental health. That's unbelievable. And we've got figures like that coming out of our ears. So we can justify every single thing we do. Yeah. And that's really important. I think that's what some other organisations which are similar don't do well enough and should do, because it's fundamentally important to demonstrate how effective what they're doing is. Something we do, and because we've got research backgrounds, we're able to do it and do it effectively.
I kind of feel like now the state of society's been quite a bit of a kind of spiritual barren and the more people get into screens and the less community time we have together. And I think it's only recently that the effects of that have been starting to show, like depression rates rising, even such as like the length that people are living is shorter because diets are worse. And so on.
We're sort of regressing, which is
and then you see projects like this, which did you say 94%? Like that's
and it's not rocket science, not rocket science. It's simply exposure to people and green space that does that.
And taking you away from screens.
But it's that social contact, that face-to-face contact, and you get that on such a variety of levels here, through working together, through sitting and eating together, through just having simple chats together, and just by passing each other in this sort of informal state. It's like I say, it's not rocket science really. People need to be engaging with green space and people on a more regular basis. And I think you see that particularly in the younger generation at the moment, with schools funding being cut dramatically, no outdoor-led sort of educational lessons. It's the rates of depression in under 16s is staggering, and that will only get worse. So it's almost an epidemic. So it's again, we do want to instill that wholesale change, but you can only do what you can do. Just provide the framework, and hopefully people will use it.
I mean, like, related to my job, just the number of people playing tennis has dropped significantly. And what scared me was that because there was a huge shift towards sports that can be like Instagrammed. That was like the term that the like governing body of tennis did a research project with thousands and thousands of people. So it's like now people are going for a run because they can track it and then share it, or they can do a spin session at the gym or something like that.
I haven't discovered Instagram yet.
No, I haven't either.
My wife loves it, but
and when I heard that, I was like, it's just, that's kind of the way things are going at the moment, which is everything's becoming a bit more insular and a bit less.
That's concerning. It's just, again, it comes back down to this: how much do we want to put that weight on ourselves in terms of getting too concerned with these things, and what can we do to counter it?
Well, you're doing a good job with this place.
Trying.
Yeah.
I think we are. We've made a difference to it. I don't know how many people's lives actually, and that's fundamentally why we do it.
So, I mean, before we finish up, how do people go about getting involved if they want to volunteer? How do they?
I think we do have a website, and I think we generally just ask people to sign up via that. And if that's not available, or you don't have access to it, phone number is 01637 877 182.
But I couldn't do that under prayer. I wouldn't be able to tell you my own phone number.
I think that's probably the best. Also, we get referrals via the GP. So if you're interested, you can always visit your GP and say that. Job centre's the same.
That's good that GPs are referring people.
Well,
knowing that. So has it become a bit more recognised that
this is
a
social prescribing movement, and it's again in its early stages. We were one of the first organisations in Cornwall to test nature prescribing as a social prescribing mechanism in partnership with Exeter University as a research project. And we've now got very good links with our local health centre. The issue with social prescribing at the moment is there is no funds going to organisations who are providing that, what we consider support mechanism. It's all going to the referral process, so that it's slightly backwards situation at the moment. But there is massive evidence there that social prescribing works, particularly nature as a social prescribing mechanism.
My girlfriend's mum had a heart attack, and they prescribed her I think about a month in a retreat.
Great.
That was part of her recovery process. Was you get a month paid for you to go and spend time in nature.
It's paid, because at the moment I think you don't see enough mechanisms which are paid. That's amazing though. That's really encouraging. It's there. It's sort of on the cusp of exploding, I think, the social prescribing movement. But again, it's just more evidence. These things just take so long to get through a process. Nearly a decade, I think, worth of evidence gathering, for it to become a sort of commissionable thing.
But I guess that's the beauty of once these facts and figures and research has been done, it's hard to not. If you can say 94% of people have had mental health benefits, it's hard for someone to then go, well, this doesn't seem like something I want to fund.
It's not quite as simple as that, unfortunately, because it all depends on how you've gathered your evidence and how there are. I'm not going to bore you with it, but there are sort of set measurement.
Do you have
measurements? We use some which are recognised by the NHS, some which are recognised by others. We try to use a really broad range, because again we've got to appeal to grant funders, we've got to appeal to commissioners, we've got to appeal to central government in terms of how we not just evidence but how we continue the contract work afterwards. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to navigate. How are you? And also these things are notoriously actually difficult to evidence anyway, because you sort of differentiating between quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative is very easy to measure because that's just a numerical thing that's a hard fact, whereas qualitative is much more narrative, story based. And that's the most powerful thing, because actually
all mental health.
Yeah, well, there's mental health measures, but how do you demonstrate someone's journey from A to B? It's not just a figure attributed thing. It's that it's their story, isn't it? So you've got to try and evidence how that person's grown through a process, and that's the most powerful bit. And case studies are quite good for doing that, but there's all manner of things outside their lives, not just here, which can influence how things change. It's a really difficult thing to get what is considered from a commissioner perspective really hard evidence that what you've done, your intervention, has made that difference to someone's life, without also the numerical qualitative stuff that is attributed to it as well.
So, and the next, so you break ground in August. Are you doing an event to celebrate?
I think we probably will do, to be determined. We're sort of flying by the seat of our pants with this development at the moment, because it's, again, we're probably still slightly short of funding for it. And it's just so much work getting these things over the line. So that little engagement, or the engagement process, which is going to be considerable, we want to document it as much as possible. It's a massive thing for us.
Yeah.
So we certainly will have a groundbreaking ceremony at some point. And we'll probably have a few events through the process, just so people can come and see what it's all about. Because, again, it's a big thing, and I think when you talk about it, people don't really get the scope of the concept. So for them to start seeing it, particularly when steel frames go up and things like that, that's really important, I think.
I think we'll put all of your social media stuff on the screen, hopefully.
Thanks.
I think social my pay grade, but
I think social media is probably the best way to get it. The phone number and the website. Probably, I mean, Facebook's probably the most easily accessible thing for us. That's where we tend to get most of our referrals. But I think that's
cool. Well, thanks for doing it.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thanks. It's been good.